What's up, Kristen? How are you doing today?
I am stretching myself to the stars. How about you?
Oh, okay. You're a little further from the mic, so I'm gonna turn your
Oh,
volume back up because you were like close, and then it was loud, and then it was quiet when you're further away. But you're
oh.
stretching. You been sitting all morning? It's like how long have you been up?
I've been up for like an hour and a half. Not too bad.
I mean,
Well, actually, it
yeah,
was very funny. This morning, I told myself I'm gonna wake up extra early so that I'll feel stressed and prepared for our show, and that
dude.
totally didn't happen. I woke up at the usual time.
The amount of days where or the amount of nights where I'm like, man, I'm gonna wake up early so I can get together everything that I need to do tomorrow morning comfortably. Like,
Hmm.
I probably have spent more days trying to do that and it not working out than any other type of morning I've tried to have. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
Why
it's
do
a
we why do we lie to ourselves?
because it's a fake solution to a problem, right? Like you, like
This is too real for the first conversation.
look, people don't join this for, my beautiful face. They join it because we I guess make
We say it.
reality not as painful. I don't know. The
Um,
but it's real.
well, okay, fine. Why is it not the real solution?
Because they're like it is procrastination masquerading as productivity
So I procrastinate yesterday's task into today, that where I
yes
will wake up early in the morning.
to handle it. And like
And
like
like,
the I hit it maybe the most with, so like I went to military college, right? And so
mhm,
I had to be at formation every morning at 7:30 a.m.
mhm.
And so I discovered pretty quickly that if I was like, oh, I'll put my uniform out or I'll like shine my shoes in the morning, it didn't happen. And then I'd get directly, I'd be in a spot, right? Because I wouldn't have the shoe shine or whatever I needed to. And so that led to me kind of realizing, okay, I really need to do everything that can possibly be done the night before so that all my responsibilities in the morning are just like waking up and like going through the steps that are already like set.
Mm.
The problem
Wow.
is when you try to do, like, you obviously have to do things in the morning. It just never happens on the timeline that you want it to. What's up, Fremon?
Hello, hello. Welcome, friend.
Hello.
Oh, and from the Twitch side.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
Mhm.
All right, Christian, we're doing a little bit. What's up? What's up? Yes, where we talked about this before. Before
Mhm.
we dive into whatever, actually, I have plenty that I want to talk to you about,
Mhm.
and frankly, I got some bones to pick with you, or clarifying questions, not in a bad way.
I prefer bones to pick.
Bones to pick.
I
All right,
just imagine us eating like a plate of wings. We're just
you
picking
don't
through
eat
the
the
top.
bones.
Well, that's why we're picking them out.
Oh, um, but so we want to, like, we decided that we want to check in with each other emotionally before diving into the show,
Mhm.
because how you're feeling changes how you communicate the things that you want to communicate, often in ways that you don't realize. This is a message to myself that I'm saying at you.
Mhm.
But so how
As
are
we
you
have
feeling today?
learned, many
Yeah.
of our lectures at each other are really projections.
Yeah, no. If y'all don't realize, anything that Kristen and I are saying probably is rooted in us trying to better ourselves in some way, and
Yeah, and
often
every
failing.
single, like, Twitter, LinkedIn guru is the same. Like, every single thing they say on their posts, if you just think they are talking to themselves like crazy people, then
Yeah.
everything would make sense.
Well, I mean, I think there are some that unironically believe that they are demigods. Like, did you see the maybe I don't want to call, maybe we'll talk about this. I don't want to call people out specifically, but I think
Oh,
that
yeah?
there are,
Tell me later.
especially some of the hustle bro dudes, like they
Yeah.
really think they are that guy. You know what I mean?
I think on one surface level, yes, but, like, in my experience of probing said hustle bros, if you
Yeah,
just ask them one clarifying question, they just falls apart.
yeah.
Like
There's a really good, Rick Glassman.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the comedian, right?
Yeah, he has a good podcast with some, we'll say some guys that want to come across as pretty like alpha masculine,
Mhm,
and he's basically like, hey, like I bet I can make you laugh, and they're like, oh yeah,
mhm.
and he just jingles a set of keys in front of their face like a baby,
Mhm.
and they laugh and immediately get pissed that they're laughing, right? Because like that's not the tough thing to do. And it's a good rant. I'd recommend anybody out there check it out if you haven't seen it. It is a great teardown of the masquerade that a lot of that
Uh.
culture is. It's basically just like laughing doesn't make you less masculine. Like it actually just reduces the quality of your life for no reason.
Well, what about for photos?
What about for
Like
photos?
like, have you seen the photos where, like, Eminem or Kanye are, like, smiling, and it actually looks super weird because you're so used to them looking hard that when they're chill, you're like, "Oh, he's just like a dad," or something like that.
Well, I'll actually say that not allowing space for the
Mhm,
full spectrum of their emotional experiences is like
mhm.
kind of sexist.
That is true, that is true.
Yeah.
Well, wait, we're checking in on our feelings, we're starting to talk
Yeah.
about other people.
No. How are you feeling today?
Oh, hmm. I'm feeling pretty psyched. It's been like a whole 2 weeks since we've last chatted.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a long 2 weeks.
yeah. I actually like I think the one like slight burden on my heart right now is I got a message from my brother. Like I have an older brother who's
Yeah.
like 17 years older.
Yeah.
And the thing is like usually when he messages nowadays is a little bit better, but growing up like every single message I get it's a request. And it's like always one that I feel like I couldn't really refuse because it's a very typical like Asian dynamic, right? When an older sibling asks you to do something, you don't really have room to back out.
I'm unaware of this. Can you like talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. So it could also just be a Kristen thing. Like so then whenever I get a message from him, I get really stressed out because I'm always like, oh my god, what does he want now? Sort of
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah. So I'm learning to like not dial it so extremely, but there is
Mhm.
still a little bit of that like, oh my gosh, he wants to use my home to store his stuff. Like, that kind of feeling.
What's the storage unit cost in California?
It's not cheap. Here's the thing, right? It's like it doesn't really make business sense, and as like Sam, of Humankind Candles will attest. It's like as an Asian person, I grew up in a warehouse essentially. It's like our home is always used to store inventory.
Gotcha.
So there's also this like feeling of like never really escaping that whole like your home is also your workplace sort of thing.
Mm. Okay.
So there's all of that going on in the background for me.
That sucks. My
Which has
instinct is
nothing
to
which is so interesting because I don't think you would have realized that until I could, like, confide in you.
no. No. I cannot read your mind and I don't know your
You
full
can't
life
read my
experiences.
mind. This
The
show's not working. We need more episodes. I expect a complete mind meld by episode 100.
Okay, actually, let me flip that for you
Mhm,
and argue that I think we're doing phenomenally well in that category
mhm,
because if you think about it, you spend many hours of your day, especially when you're younger with your family, right?
mhm,
Like hours and hours. So like one full day, like if you go to school, you probably spend anywhere between like 4 to 10 hours in close proximity with your family, right?
mhm,
And so that's every day for let's call it 18 years, right? And it like changes throughout the time, but like roughly 4 to 10 hours every day for 18 years. And so you have a dynamic with your family that is born from like hours and hours and hours of connection. I would argue that I know more and am more thoughtful about our interactions than some members of my family, even though I've had that amount of time compared
mhm,
to our like 40 actual shows, which are like about 90 minutes plus, let's call it like, we'll just double that for like prep calls, right? It's
mhm,
probably a little bit more than that, we can call it triple, but like with 150 hours of interacting, I think we're
mhm.
doing pretty good.
Yes,
You know what I
yes, that
mean?
is true.
Like there's no point in lamenting where we are when I think we're like doing pretty good.
I know, I know. But I do have a mind meld idea that I'll bother you about after the show. That's so
Okay.
horrifying.
Is it not show appropriate?
Well, it's an idea. Like I've been I tested out with my friend Lewis, who's at Bad Cat on Farcaster.
Okay.
Like, okay, so you know, like how that's ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you have a shared document where you can access each other's like journal entries. So you
Yeah.
technically have one shared mind that the both ChatGPTs can draw from.
Oh,
Like
okay. So
imagine
like
doing that for like,
the
when we disagree or whatever. It's like a automatic couples counseling, but with the absolutely no build.
absolute. Wait, what do you mean no bill?
Because like now, on ChatGPT, you can access your Google Drive G Doc, right? So all you need is one shared G Doc, then it would have one shared memory.
Interesting. Obviously, there's collection issues, and only collecting part of your brain. So it probably makes sense to have like the device that we didn't like, or something like that, recording a bunch of stuff. But that's interesting. I think there's
Oh,
something
the
to that.
limitless device.
What was it?
The limitless little clip-on thingy.
Yeah, the
That
limited
was it.
limitless device.
Yeah. Yes, of course. And it's always going to be like whatever you tell the ChatGPT, right? But if you
Yep.
let's just say you go to a real like, couples counseling therapist, like you will only have something to share with them anyway. They can't base it on your entire life.
I mean, you could also give them a shared Google Doc.
That is true. But then you have to pay for that.
Okay, but that's a different argument, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I thought it was really clever. However, I think Lewis and I kept it up for like one day so far
Yeah,
because sharing the journal entries is really troublesome. But
it's done.
anyway, in lieu of a journal entry, how are you feeling right now?
I'm pretty good. I would give it like a B minus. I slept pretty well last night. I was a little bit late for our show prep, so that's it. Like we're a little scrambly, and just got some unexpected family news that were like not that anything bad is happening, but like
Mm.
hey, this is a thing to be aware of moving forward, which is never fun.
Mm.
And so just like the ambient anxiety is a little bit higher, but I'm really stoked to talk about there is no antimemetics division in a little bit, because I think I'll say it's one of my favorite fiction books right now.
It's
And so overall, B minus, cumulative, I have a cumulative, man, I don't know how to say that word. Cumulative work exhaustion, which we've been talking about, but that's kind of on the that's getting better, ameliorated for my SAT word fans out there, and yeah, so I'm excited. I'm glad that we're
there's like
chatting again
zero
today.
zero of those fans out there.
I mean, we got. I think there's some SAT fans in the crowd. I bet on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and for those who are not from the United States of America, SAT is the standard test you take when you go from high school to college to get into college.
Honestly, people not from the US that can understand English, like I think have better vocabularies a lot of the time.
Oh, 100%. Because we had to take a different exam to get to the US or to do like
Yeah.
English stuff,
Yeah.
which
And
did
so like
involve memorizing a bunch of words like ameliorated.
yeah. So Americans, ameliorate means to make better.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
that's
so
pretty good.
it seems
So
like we both have human experiences of
yeah,
relational variety.
surprise, surprise, we're people.
Well, do you mind hanging out with chat for a second? Because I feel like I want to let a few more folks that were live right now, which I did not finish up due to our rush.
I would love to.
Okay,
Frame on,
thank you.
yes. How y'all doing today? We're I'm chilling. I found my notepad for the book. Like we almost had to do this book discussion today full raw, which like I'm pretty good at, or I enjoy doing. But I like having notes because because I deliberately want to hit on some of these topics because we're going to be talking about memes, we're going to be talking about anti-memes, we're going to be talking about different parts of the internet, of which Kristen and I are both pretty big nerds about, just like not just internet culture, but internet communities and how they spread and how ideas spread between them, and stories too. What I really like about the book stuff that we've been doing recently is that we get a chance to like nerd out about story structure and how to make an interesting narrative, which in most of my life I get to do through making content, but not necessarily through like discussing and yapping and nerding out about it. I think a good outcome for OK Banger is us turning into kind of like a nexus for a Asinius, which is a topic that Adrian, for our Farcaster friends, brought up on Farcaster a while ago about like what Farcaster is. And I think it is still that in some ways and isn't in other ways. But for us, I think OK Banger can be a really interesting focal point for people that like thinking about the craft of making not just like content type things, but stories in general. Because I actually think one of the most fundamentally human things is telling stories. We we don't live in each other's minds as obsessed as Kristen and I are about connecting and crossing what my old poetry professor called the vast interpersonal gulf. I think she got inspired by another poet that said that. But the interpersonal gulf between people is ultimately uncrossable, and so every conversation, every note you pass, every bit of signal that you put out into the universe is an attempt to cross that interpersonal gulf. And that's one of the most interesting things about OK Banger to me is that we just talk about that explicitly a lot of the time. And did we communicate what we're trying to communicate?
Yeah, I think Stephen King says something similar, where like his writing of fiction is the closest he can get to telepathy. So
Yo,
until we have our weird mind reading devices that are forcibly installed into our heads, that's
yo.
all we got.
Honestly, I don't really want Stephen King's thoughts in my head.
You're right. Wait a minute.
Like, especially old Stephen King, it's pretty weird.
Hmm. He's very prolific, though.
Yeah,
I do
he's
admire that
incredibly
about him.
prolific. In
Hmm.
in the daily, I think in the Daily Rituals book that I have around here somewhere, his routine is something like he writes us like a certain amount of pages or like for 6 hours straight every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
It's
and
nuts.
and he did it from when he was like super poor. Have you read his memoir
I don't
on
think so.
writing?
No, I've read a ton of Wikipedia backstories of or like Wikipedia like backstories of
Oh.
Stephen King, but I don't think
Hmm.
I've did he write it?
Yeah, he wrote it.
Oh, it's a
It's like
memoir.
part memoir, part tutorial.
Oh, interesting. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe I'll
actually,
check
it
that.
might make a good book for one of our future episodes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because he
I like
talks
that. Let
about
me let
how
me
like he started off like just trying to make it as a writer back when you pretty much have to be find an agent and make a really hard shot and
yeah,
of course he writes about his life experience as itself a Stephen King novel because you hear about how he had to like work in these super un- environmentally friendly environments where he's washing tablecloths that are filled with rotting seafood. It's so
true.
hot that they have to eat salt pills or they'll just keel over.
Yeah,
While also
been there.
submitting all his entries to try to be a writer. And
Yeah.
he talks about how his wife was really supportive because he threw like so many drafts in the trash, and the one that she rescued from the trash is the one that got him famous.
Which one?
Carrie, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Dude, he saw like his like best friend get hit by a train as a kid?
No, I did not know that
Yeah,
one.
that's like one of that'll circulate on Reddit periodically. And I might have it a little wrong, but more or less when he was like in his early like teens or like 10, 11 years old, they were
Hmm.
playing on the train tracks because it was like the 70s and didn't get out of the way of the train, and then he just comes home, and that's like talked about as one of the seeds of the macabre.
So are you telling me that all these novels has just been Stephen King trauma processing the entire time?
Are you surprised?
No, because the other thing that happened to him, again, it's a very like coincidental, maybe artistic thing, but
Yep.
he got hit by a car.
Dang, that sucks.
and the person who did it was just like like looming over him and staring at him for a very long time before calling the cops or something. It was like a very Stephen
Spooky.
King novel-esque situation happening to him, and I'm like, oh, like I hope it's
That
just because of
sucks.
the way he describes it, just automatically makes it a Stephen King situation.
Yeah.
But there is something to that.
Yeah. I think people are nuts, man. Like there's a video that popped up also on Reddit a couple days
Mhm.
ago of a what was probably a motorcyclist driving too fast, if I'm being fair. But he's going through an intersection and has a helmet cam, and he hits the side of a car.
Mhm.
You're supposed to think like, oh, they ran a red light. I don't know. You can't really tell from the video. I know I used to have a motorcycle. I know I drove too fast. So I'm
Mhm.
not surprised when motorcyclists drive too fast. But he hits the side. I don't know if he's dead or not, but the helmet comes off and lands in the passenger seat of the car.
Mhm.
And it's like a scene from a movie where helmet is just like on the driver, and it's this like older lady, no reaction. None. She's just listening to music.
Mhm.
Generously, she's in shock. Not generously, she didn't notice, and she probably shouldn't have been driving. I don't know what it is, but that is one of the more Stephen King like videos I've seen recently.
And is this in under like r/watch people dying? One of those
No,
horrifying ones?
it was like I think the motorcyclist is supposed to have uploaded it. You know what I mean? Like a
Oh,
look,
okay, okay.
like one of those shock videos of like screw this boomer. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know. It was very, very mimetic on the timeline, or like people. It got people to engage. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people shared it because it was pretty shocking visually.
Mhm.
You've been thinking about any good memes lately? What's up, Royal?
Oh, speaking of Royal, well, the latest one I did is the factory meme that I totally, stole Royal's series from.
The
Uh,
factory meme?
yeah, the one that you post sometimes too. It's the one where there's a machine and then there's stuff coming out, and then it's like, oh,
Oh
I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
we're
yeah,
doing whatever now.
yeah. That's a Twitter original. That's
Oh,
pretty
I did
good.
not know that.
Oh yeah, like it was very big on like tech Twitter, right? Because
Mhm.
every software person in tech fantasizes hardcore about doing something physical,
Mhm.
and so it was like people love using that meme for things because it makes them feel like they have dirty hands.
Oh, like, and it's interesting how these memes are drifting towards our zeitgeist, right? Because right now we're in the whole like, manufacturing in the US situation and like fantasizing about manual labor due to the destruction of not non-manual labor is what we'll call it, like coding stuff.
Do we think that the memes are lagging or leading the zeitgeist?
Lagging, right? Or
I
do you think
fully
they're leading?
disagree. I fully disagree.
Oh.
Yeah. The Royal, I'll check out your profile.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I
feel like it feeds into it. It amplifies it. But I
yeah,
don't think it's the first cause, right? Can it be a meme?
yeah, for sure. The
Oh, well, that's
so
disturbing.
okay. So here's my micro thesis on manufacturing specifically as a meme.
Mhm.
Boomers have a view of the world that have been baked into them for 50 plus years. It is a worldview that feels tangible. It
Mhm.
harkens back to their rose-colored glasses of the past, of like, oh, the like back then, 50s, 60s, whatever, we used to make things like, which is has like kernels of truth,
Mhm.
but misses a lot of the nuance around like, hey, when we made things in America, we also polluted all of America with making the things.
Mhm.
And like acid rain was like a real thing that affected real environments and like killed real children. But so boomers, I would say, have like the Manchurian Candidate like sleeper cell idea that like this version of their world of the world that they remember fondly is right in general.
Mhm.
It's a very easy to understand on its surface thing because they're like, oh, making things is important because things are important because I like holding things because we're like meat bags that care about meat
Mhm.
space.
Right, right.
And it is wrapped up in what I actually really think it's wrapped up in a masculine sense of identity, because
Mhm.
making things with your hand is the shortest cycle time to proving that you are valuable. Because as we talk about a lot on the show, like, men think of their self-worth and are told by society that their worth is the result of doing things and producing things. And so if you don't understand how computers work, or even if you do and you like tip tap type and you know that your
Mhm.
stuff can get deleted with one keystroke, like, having a physical thing that you can hold in your hand feels more important, because it can't just like disappear outside of your control. And so,
So
yeah,
isn't this a secondary meme? Because they're using this whole like, masculine ideal as a form of manipulation, right? But
yeah.
there is like another bigger core one.
Are you talking about like the factory meme explicitly, or industrial thinking as like a meme?
Industrial thinking as a meme, which leads to a factory meme. But we're doing like detective work, right? We're
Yeah.
tracing from one innocent, cute meme all the way back to what is happening in society and the trajectory it's going.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is some mimetic ideal that is being pushed right now, which leads to all of these secondary changes.
Yeah. So
But that core thing didn't start up as a factory meme, right? Like that's the end result. The core thing is still certain groups of people wanting to push a certain narrative.
yeah, I criticize this kind of thing a lot, like we do on this show.
Hmm.
Building factories is an easy, obvious fake solution. It is the solution that somebody has when they don't understand an issue about supply chains and making things and creating a society where people have like
Hmm.
meaningful work and enough resources to kind of meet
Hmm.
their basic needs. The idea is that, like, oh, we buy things, we don't make them, and that's a problem in reality, sometimes because of security issues.
Hmm.
And the solution is like, we'll just make things without
Hmm.
any nuance around like how you would make the things, because there's
Yeah,
many things that you actually can't make without dramatically changing how not just your economy, but how like the entire world works. But
exactly.
that's really hard to do, and nobody wants to like understand that in a TikTok, which is, honestly not a new problem.
Hmm.
I think the secondary memes that we're seeing on Twitter
Hmm.
are kind of like you have to ask the question, why is something mimetic? And
Hmm.
like maybe we should define memes. But like I kind of use a simple definition of memes as like a self-propagating idea.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like
When
what's you
when I first learned about it, it was in the context of biology and neuroscience because
Yeah,
we
can you talk about that?
yeah, we had a class called sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we were all like, "Oh my god, we're signing up for that elective." But we were like, "Oh man, it's actually like
It's
actually
a
the
science
subject was
class?
super cool." I know it was a science class. It was a neuroscience class, but it was really cool. But one thing is that was why we first learned about memes, and it was before it was really a thing. And so the analogy we taught is like, oh, it's like a virus for ideas. So that's and virus, as far as we know right now, are self-propagating machines that are technically not defined as living, which is
Yeah,
like super
they
weird.
yeah, that always there's an episode of Jimmy Neutron that goes into viruses, and and unironically changed
Uh-huh.
my life, because it made me think of viruses in the context that they're like very weird things. Can you talk about
Mhm.
that as a neuroscience PhD?
Yeah, so like, when we imagine a virus, it's almost like they're little aliens with landing gears, right? And
Yeah, that's why the episode was so compelling, because they were like, this is what a virus looks like.
mhm. Yeah, and like, in theory, they are like the simplest machinery whose only like job is to self-propagate. And like they don't have a lot of the other like definitions of living things like, respiration and like, a lot of the traditional biological definitions of living things. However, I think the definition of living things is going to change, especially with AI, because, consciousness is changing and all of that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like in a way, if memes are an analogy for viruses, I can see that Jimmy Neutron is getting a lot of excitement in the chat.
That actually, the Alyssa Ford is one of my friends from college. I haven't talked to in like
Oh,
a decade. So shout out Alyssa. Hey, I'm glad you're hanging out on LinkedIn. And hey, Priyanka.
yeah. Did you know that camera will be mentioning Jimmy Neutron in the
You
Red
know,
Tuesday?
the generational trauma, I guess. But okay, but you're
Um,
saying simplest machine that
that
can exist, life
self-replicates.
definition is going to change.
Exactly, because I think like which a lot of people don't like particularly love it when I say like silicon based life forms when it comes to AI,
Yeah.
or like let's not treat AI very poorly because soon they'll become conscious and we should not do that.
I will say I'm probably going to be one in the first wave of people Skynet kills because I'm kind of rude to robots.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we gotta not to watch out, but it's sort of like do as we would like to be treated.
It's not alive though. Like, do I treat my like toolbox and the items in it like well because I want to keep using the tool? Yes. Do I treat
Mhm.
them well because I think that there's a moral imperative? No. And like where computers are today, that's where I'm at.
Well, I think that more imperative is like a slippery slope, right? Or like a gradation. It depends on
Okay.
who you're talking to, right? Let's just say, you're from like a Shinto sort of religion when you believe there's like livingness
Yeah,
in even
spirits
inanimate
everywhere, right?
objects, right? And then like a lot of them like treat their tools really well because they see as living.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and as you know, the controversial thing is like, do you eat animals? Like that is also like a very like, shades of gray, more imperative. Like it's like that meme where it's like, where do you cut off where what animal you're willing to eat from PETA or something, right? So I think it's the same way. Like, where do you cut off like these new conscious beings that we might be accidentally creating?
Well, they're not conscious, and we don't have
Yes,
evidence that is
yes, yeah.
conscious. So I think the cutoff is fairly clear right now. I do like acquiesce. Acquiesce. I don't know if that's the right word. I do
Mhm.
concede that in a couple years, I'm going to need to reevaluate.
Yeah, and then Royal brings up a great point, which is like, we can't assume that AI have human value systems, but I think that's why these AI safety people are trying to make sure, maybe. I hope that's what they're doing. I have no idea what they're actually doing.
I have zero faith that we're going to have any safeguards in any meaningful kind of way.
Hmm.
Zero
But
faith.
I think the other slippery slope, even as I mentioned, like let's use ChatGPT to meld our brains. Like that's so dangerous, right? Like it's like, at what point is Kristen going to act according to what her LLMs say to do, and then who carries the moral imperative at that point? So I think these are actual issues to explore as we're trying to use it more and more.
Well, to muddy it even more, we are already melding with technology in a meaningful way with our magic rectangles. And
Hmm.
we are, for hours at a time consuming effectively economic and political propaganda as a
Yeah.
result of just liking memes, maybe
Hmm.
about factories in the feed. And so
Hmm.
I do agree that it is a spectrum, but I also think we live in a reality where we're drawing arbitrary lines all the time because none of us really have the luxury of perfecting where our line drawing can go in our day-to-day life.
Hmm.
Um,
But isn't that like our favorite activity
well, yeah, that's why we are
between the
trying to make
humans?
this show self-sustainable because we want to do this.
Yeah.
But for me, I will be much more likely to stomp on the Terminator's neck than to worry about it feeling bad about me. That's where I sit with this engagement right now.
That's true. You are in a very special position. You
I
have
mean,
seen like all the Terminator movies, right? Because I think
oh yeah.
someone in this chat has not had until recently, and I was very shocked.
What's up, Ian, over from LinkedIn? Thanks for dropping it.
Thanks for dropping by, Ian.
The
Are
yeah,
we the most jarring show to see on LinkedIn?
honestly, I hope we're a sleeper cell LinkedIn hit because I
I
think
think so.
like I think there are a lot of people that are either forced to be on LinkedIn because of like the context of their work, other people like want to be there, and I understand that because it's like a social platform that roughly everybody is going in the same direction.
Right.
It like, and so like if you want connection without the embedded baggage of all of these other social platforms, I begrudgingly respect LinkedIn as a place to do that.
Mhm.
But I hope
They
that
are.
like
Mhm.
we can propagandize them ourselves with a
Mhm.
positive, good, thoughtful, nuanced debate,
Yes. Non-toxic positivity.
assuming positive intent non-toxically.
Yes.
We're basically crayons. How do you say that word, by the way,
Crayons?
bro? I say crayons.
What?
Alyssa loves the show. That's great. Yeah. So
Okay,
I
the chat, how do you say the
the c
wax
word,
sticks
the c word.
that I use to draw things? Is it because you're more like up, well, you know, I guess you are from the south. Because it almost sounds like what I expect a more up north person. Like, how do you say the sachet you use to carry things?
The what? A bag?
Okay, you say bag. Okay, okay.
Not.
Because
I
you know
don't say
how.
beg
Yeah,
or.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so Priyanka says crayons. That's the international perspective. I guess you're the international perspective too. I know crayons isn't the right way to say it, but like so there's
What?
crayons,
Royal also
crayons.
says crayons too.
Yeah, heck
What?
yeah. Um, I'm gonna blow your mind with this one. Have you ever heard somebody call them? I'm gonna blow your mind with this one. Have you ever heard somebody call them crowns?
No.
I've heard people say crowns too.
This is turning into Benedict Cumberbatch trying to say penguins. What's going on?
Oh, Cumberbatch. Yeah, alien face. Oh, there's two birds outside my window. That's fun.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I feel very outnumbered today. Crayons?
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I
Well,
think I think the people have spoken. It's yeah, Yin's royal. Like, it's
what's a
if you
yins?
if you don't say words right, then you probably say crayons. I say a lot of words wrong.
Does yins stand for something?
Yeah, it's like a y'all kind of thing.
Oh.
I think I don't know, like the um yeah, I think that's where I sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
But so my mom is from the Baltimore, Maryland area, and so
Oh.
she says wash instead of wash.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, words are weird, man.
I tried to watch The Wire, but then I had to use subtitles.
The that's funny. The there's oh the last thing is I learned that I mean depending on who you ask linguistically,
Mm-hmm.
Southern accents are supposedly closer to English accents than like Northern English. And so there's a big trend of people reading Shakespeare in a Southern accent
Mm-hmm.
on like short form video platforms right now. And honestly, it hits pretty hard in my opinion.
Oh. Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I think I've seen a documentary showing, or one of those Peter Sentinel videos showing that there's people who speak like English in America, like in this like little preserved southern town or something.
yeah, I buy that. The
Hmm.
fascinating. So,
Yes.
Kristen,
All
we've we've
right.
we've prepped the battlefield about memes.
Mm-hmm. Now we got to watch out and infect everybody with anti-meme.
Although I guess you can't. I mean, what's your takeaway of an anti meme? Like,
Oh,
what's
should
your
we talk about what the book is about first?
yeah the So we're getting into there is no antimemetics division here by Quantum QNTM.
Oh, is that
As
what
far
it
as
is?
I think it
Oh,
stands
it's
for quantum.
QNT.
I don't know for sure. If you haven't bought it, you can't. Sorry. We'll maybe have something in the Discord that lets you read the book. But the author is getting or got a publishing deal, and they're trying to get more copies of the book. But so we bought it when it wasn't under a deal. So that's why it's like kind of hard to find right now. I think you can buy a copy for like $300. I don't
Yeah,
recommend it.
well, we're just so crazy.
Yeah.
But the revised version will come out around October or something.
I have no idea.
Which is pretty
Listen to
soon. So
Kristen.
if you're seeing this video in October, hello.
Shout out. Go get the book. And so it is a story based on the lore from the SCP Foundation, which is an online fiction project which has been going on. It is an online fiction project that has been going on for about like 15, 20 years now. It's old internet. It is a public fiction project where anybody can submit short stories about this organization called the Secure, Contain, Protect Foundation. And it's kind of like a crowdsourced Twilight Zone, is a good way to think about it. And so this story follows kind of two characters. One, a division head in the antimemetics division. Also, there's going to be a ton of spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, like skip this part. But it's
Yeah, it's
good for
hard
the
for us.
discussion.
So Cameron and I, Kristen, every week we discuss a book. This is our collection of books so far.
Yeah.
And so by definition, we will have to spoil the book in order to talk about it.
But we're doing it with the hopes of you reading it.
Yeah,
Because
and I think we're both really careful. I think neither one of us spoil like key plot points. Usually, when we talk about fiction books or that's classic, where it's like you get the general idea, and
I
even
mean,
then you still enjoy the book.
we've done 2 fiction books. So I don't know if we could pull any trends from it.
End
The-
of 2 is better than end of 1.
yeah. But I mean, we could. I mean, we haven't done the book yet. But anyway, the point is we're trying to get you excited about reading the book because a plot summary is not a book experience. And as we enter a world where it is going to be easier and easier to get plot summaries of anything, choosing what experiences to experience matters more than ever. And so hopefully we can help you make better choices about that. But
Yeah.
so the title, Alyssa, is There Is No Antimemetics Division. And so we'll be talking about memes, anti-memes, and interesting things from the book. But so the quick plot of the story is division chief of an anti-memetics division, gets in a situation where there's a world-ending thing happening. This is pretty common in the SCP universe. If you've read any of the stories, basically, the stakes are pretty high a lot of the time. The book has a device, which happens in the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler, and it continually happens throughout the book, where anti-memes are ideas where anti-memes are ideas that can't really propagate past the context of the situation that you're understanding them in. So you read a paragraph, and then as soon as you take the paragraph away from your face or you walk out of the room, you forget what you read. So many of the situations in the book are operatives in the SCP Foundation realizing that they don't really know what's happening and piecing together based on the missing plot points in their brain what is happening in that situation. Add world level stakes, universe level stakes in here, and you get a really interesting device that you see used throughout the book over and over again. That just kind of like makes you think about the nature of solving problems and trying to understand ideas in the first place. Because there's a lot of things that we forget all the time. And I think that's probably enough that you need to understand some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Did I miss anything, Kristen?
Yeah, and the book actually itself makes a reference to the movie Memento by Guy
Yeah.
Ritchie, which so
Yes.
it's sort of like that idea. And I think in terms of like modern zeitgeist, Severance is a TV show that also addresses the memory loss idea as well.
Yeah. Memento and Severance are good modern analogs, although I guess this is modern too. If you haven't seen Memento, go check it out. Great movie. If you
It
haven't
is a great
seen
movie.
Severance, what are you doing? It's all over all the timelines.
So, what did you think about the book? Actually, why did you recommend me this book at this time?
I recommended this book because I wanted an excuse to reread it. So I had read it once before, and I had a sneaking suspicion it would hit differently the second time, and it did. I also think it is a really good time to be thinking about memes and anti-memes in terms of where we exist in like society, but also like as individuals interacting with other people. as you said earlier, memes didn't used to be a concept people really thought about in a serious way. And over the past like 10, 15 years, we realized that like the concept of a meme is really important to understand people in their relationship to the internet. Different ideas have different baked in amounts of their ability to spread. And conversely, in the context of this book, but also in reality, ideas have a non-spreading factor or like a non-spreading quotient too. And
Mhm.
so for me, an anti-meme is an idea that resists propagation. There's a lot of different reasons why that might happen, but that's like its like root definition. Does that definition, do you use that definition?
That sounds about right to me. And I feel like this book is really well written in providing you. So it's not just about the plot, even as you're reading it. Remember, I was messaging you going, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting this book as I'm reading it? Am I being infected right now? So it does a really good job of giving you a lived experience of anti-meme, which I
Yes.
am so amazed by the author. Or was it a set of authors? I'm actually not sure if it's more than one author at this
I,
point.
I think it's one person who took a
Mhm.
bunch of different SCP files, like little
Mhm.
short stories, and combined them into a narrative
Into
arc.
one narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So if you read it, which I highly recommend people to do, like you will experience anti-meme
Yeah.
as something that is really somatic for me.
Yeah, and we'll also leave the link to the SCP Foundation and a couple of my favorite little files because a lot of them are
Mhm.
categorized by anomalies themselves. And an anomaly is basically like what they describe a phenomenon or an object or a creature that
Mhm.
fits into this universal space. And so
Mhm.
different creatures, kind of like Pokemon, do different things, right?
Yep.
There's ones that eat your memory. There's ones that insta kill you. There's anything that you can kind of come up with. Some 13-year-old on the internet, aka
Mhm.
me, a while ago, like
Mhm.
would write things
Right.
and get accepted into the canon. What did you think of the book?
Have you
Oh,
submitted any to the SCP Foundation or
I
division?
I I definitely did. Alyssa, thanks. Alyssa points out it'll be published later this year,
Mhm.
November 25th. So thank you for that. I think I did when I was younger, and I was like looking for the exact thing because like I don't think names are attached to it, and I
Mm,
couldn't find it. But like I was a weird internet kid. I spent a lot of time on places on the internet like this, and
okay.
so if I didn't, I definitely read hours worth,
Mhm.
many hours worth. What did you think of the book?
So I would recommend it to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know we're spoiling spoiling our recommendation here
Unsurprising. Three
a little
episodes
bit
in a row.
early.
Kristen gives a recommendation up front.
No, it's not hard for me to talk about book without saying whether I like it or not at the very beginning, right?
Gotta lay the
Um,
breadcrumbs. But
yeah,
obviously, I'm gonna recommend it too. Like
yeah, exactly. So, one of the key plot points of the book, like, is that the whole anti-meme situation is weaponized, right? Like that's why the foundation has to fight against them.
yeah.
And one of
Some
the
importantly, some are weaponized intentionally, and some are like naturally weapons. And so, like
Mhm,
one idea that is actually isn't talked about in the book, it's obliquely referenced, is the idea of info hazards and cognito hazards.
mhm,
And that's the idea that some ideas are inherently dangerous. So then, like once you understand the idea, it
mhm.
irrevocably changes you in some way, which is super relevant to probably what you're about to say.
Yes. And also so anti-meme is like a property, right? Because there's
Yes.
also some creatures in here with anti-meme properties that are just peaceful living creatures doing their own thing.
Yeah.
However, in this particular plot point, there's ones that are destroying the world. So the main protagonist has to figure out like how do you solve this problem? And she figured out that ideas can be killed, and everyone's like, how do you kill like
Yeah.
these sort of ideas? And she just said with better ideas.
Hell yeah. I love that.
So, what do you think is a bad idea now? And how do you define what even a good idea even is?
Well, okay. So you kind of got to define what good and bad are.
Mhm.
And I think making anti memes like what makes something anti-memetic you got to do like you got to figure out what makes something anti-memetic before you do any of this other discussion. And so and I think the best way to understand why something is anti-memetic is to understand why things are memetic in general. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. So viruses are memetic because they are like they exist to do and they do certain things that allow them to propagate within and across organisms, right? Memes on the internet propagate because there's some sort of fundamental value to that thing to a group of people that incentivizes them to share it. And so I think the easiest meme to understand on the internet are cat videos or cat pictures. You watch cat videos because you get a nice little dopamine of like, oh, look how cute that kitty is, right? And you get social status and strengthen relationships with people you care about by sending them cat videos because then they get that sense of good feeling and then quasi associate that good feeling with you. And so cat videos are memetic because there's inherent value in the cat video to you and your physical like body and mind. Other things are memetic because there's other value associated with it. Like telling somebody about your promotion, you might share that because you get social status because you share it. And then other people might share it because they get social status by dunking on you because you're talking about your promotion. You know what I mean? And so different like the recipient or people around it, like a thing can be memetic in different ways to different organisms.
Yeah.
And
Would you say broadly, like there is like status play and some sort of somatic self-soothing?
If I'm being like super pedantic, I would say status play is self-soothing, and so it's all ultimately
True.
self-soothing.
There's also self-soothing. That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Like you are a bag of chemicals, and the memes you get, whether they are professional, personal, or just like goofy in like insane, like they do something to your body chemicals and you get a benefit because you're sharing them. Religion is also like different religions have different levels of memeticism, but
Right.
explicitly evangelical religions are memetic because the religion's rules are that it needs to be memetic and that's the right way to do that religion. Conversely, anti-memes are things that resist that sharing because there's some sort of value in not sharing it. The SCP universe takes that idea of value and makes it more intrinsic to the item, like kind of like an addiction, like a drug addiction type scenario. But in real life, things that are not things that are anti-memetic, I kind of try to categorize it as things that are boring are anti-memetic because there's like an absence of value in sharing it. And so relatively, there's tons of other things you would rather share. Things that are really dense, like theoretical physics, like these things that some people might find interesting and share between their friends, but most people won't because it doesn't hit the body chemicals the same way. And then the other category of things that I think are anti-memetic in a weird way are things that cause you specific kinds of anxiety.
Yeah, like a flinch.
Yeah. And so like the thing that causes you anxiety in an action oriented way might be memetic, but the things that cause you anxiety in a existential type way, you might not want to share it. I was trying to come up with examples for these. The closest that I could get with anti-memetics anxiety is like criticisms or problems with your social groups. So like if you are a hardcore Democrat and a prominent Democrat has like it comes out that they're insider trading on their position, that's a thing that you may not want to share depending on like how comfortable you feel in your position because it hurts the causes you care about, even if it's not something that you want to happen. Obviously, it happens on the other side plenty too. And so like things that would be damaging, frankly, ultimately to you are have antimemetic property, localized antimemetic properties. But figuring out how memetic and antimemetic things are, I think, is really important to communicating with people in general. And then, maybe second, third order effects in existing on the internet too.
For sure. And in terms of like anti-mimetic example of religion, I feel like a lot of Buddhist teachings or like
Extremely
teachings in
anti-mimetic.
that world are very anti-mimetic. I feel like it is designed that way, and a lot of the teachings are based on like the art of remembering. And I feel like a lot of these like modern translations or Western translations of Buddhism often over anchor on like meditation as being the
Mm,
translation of what you should do. But the word sati in Pali actually means to remember. And
okay.
a lot of it is like remembering any sort of experiences that you felt outside of your normal realm and using that as a reference point to remember that wait, this is currently one is in a deluded world right now.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
The that's very interesting. I
I feel like it's
I
like a video game where it will end too quickly if everyone gets it. So there's a lot of anti-mimetic like little traps to keep you from ending the game too early.
Oh, that's interesting. That actually, so that kind of makes this. I'm gonna beat this metaphor to death.
Mhm.
Um, but the in a way, tuberculosis, which we talked about in our last video, is less mimetic than other diseases, and that contributed to its longevity as a problem on like as a blight on humanity. It's not mimetic. It's like it is the equivalent spreading property. Like what's the is it K factor in viral stuff?
Oh gosh, you'll remember more than I do. But like you're talking about how it's for a long time they didn't even know like it was a spreadable disease, right?
Yeah, because it was
So
so slow.
yeah, so therefore people just like thought it was a thing that happens randomly to people, and the fact that some people randomly recover also made it really non-viral like.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, most of that book and everything is tuberculosis does discuss how it was a mimetic idea to
Mm,
think of people with TB as like artisty types
yeah.
who they romanticize the disease to think that it gave them like good properties of artistic nature or something like that.
Why was that a meme?
Uh,
Or why do you think
because
that
it
was
was
a
it was
meme?
a status thing, right? Like TB was actually a statusy thing to have, which is very very disturbing in modern times. But I'm
Yeah.
sure, like even right now, we think of there are certain like bodily ideals that come from like diseases that we
Yeah.
still admire,
Yeah. Cope.
not naming what they are.
I would broadly call it like cope. Like cope is very mimetic because it
Yeah,
is a self-soothing thing, as you pointed out,
right.
for things that especially for things that you can't change. You
Hmm.
want the thing that you can't change to somehow be a good thing because it's an insurmountable fact of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, all sorts of body dysmorphia.
Yeah. Disc over on Twitter asked, what is it like? So basically what is fun is worth sharing or mimetics. Yeah, I mean, I think fun as a concept that falls under the broad characteristic of like mimetics in a signal
Hmm.
is one of the many factors that make it that make it more or less likely to share. If something is more fun, it is more likely to get shared, all other things being equal, I think.
So broadly, is a meme something that addresses our hidden incentive, so be it status or safety or whatever, whereas an anti-meme is something that triggers the opposite, like I have a hidden agenda to not feel bad in this way.
I don't think so. I think you're like I think I wouldn't apply as much agency to it.
Mm.
Like I think memes are what they are because it is much closer to like a biological consideration than it is to
Hmm.
anything else. Obviously, the more high functioning you are, the more agency and self understanding you are, the
Hmm. But
more
that's what I
likely.
meant by hidden, though.
Okay,
Like
so
it's hidden to you. Like you don't even know what your incentives are unless you develop self awareness and all of that. But even
but
as you know, like it kicks in afterwards, right?
who hit it?
It has to do with how like most of our mind is subconscious,
Yeah,
right? Like in a basic term, although conscious Kristen is talking to conscious Cameron, there's like a whole like 90% of what's operating is not of our conscious will.
yeah,
Breathing. You're not thinking about
yeah.
breathing, it's happening.
Tracking.
So a
So
lot
I
of the decision making is not conscious, it's justified and rationalized afterwards. That's why you and I have debates about what's logical and what's not. And I lean towards like we justify as being logical afterwards, whereas you're like,
I
eh.
I do agree with that. I think it is a definitional difference between us on
Mm,
like if something is hidden, there's a whole value structure about like things in the universe.
mm-hmm,
If something is fundamental or like your base,
mm-hmm.
like chemical makeup or whatever, then that is a non attributable, you know, random coincidence of the universe. And so I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's actually Danny from Farcaster
What's up,
posted
Danny?
this Scots. Who hit it? Childhood trauma in my experience or cultures? Ooh. Can I take
Go
us
for
on
it.
the journey of my trauma triggered from this book?
Yeah, the book triggered something in you.
Yes, yes. So, when I was in my 20s, I was deeply, deeply depressed. So then I was, on this whole, cornucopia of pharmaceuticals trying to figure out what will help me feel more functional because it was affecting my ability to work, which, as you know, is the most important thing. And one of them made me lose my memory.
Like, can you describe what that means?
Yeah. So one of them that I will not name, there's actually a class action lawsuit that happened for this drug, um, caused me to have gaps in my life, sort of like the movie Memento, where I'm like, okay, I'm driving, but I don't know how it got here. Or like, back when, we had like a little GPS in the car, like I would rely on it, but still like get lost on my really usual route between work and home. And like one time I was shopping at Trader Joe's and I remember wandering around thinking, oh, I need to get some skirt steak or whatever. I look in the cart, it's already there.
Dang,
Like like there were like major gaps that I couldn't explain as to what happened.
that's
And
great
later
out of the
on it
book.
was revealed. So and then of course I blame myself too, as I was like, oh, my body's not reacting well to the drug. But many years later, after I've like regained my wherewithal, like I learned that that drug was a generic version of another one, and there was a class action lawsuit for its inactive ingredients. The binding
Dude.
ingredients were actually like affecting the way it's released in the body.
That
And so
sucks.
but however, like, speaking of like new cope, then had to develop a bunch of mechanisms to account for the fact that my memory has issues. So that's where all my bizarre note-taking habits had to like, develop, because I had to have a way, kind of like Memento, like leave little notes for myself everywhere to be like, okay, I was doing this and then I need to continue picking up from here. And many years of therapy to like be okay with, because then as my memory like recovered, I would say it's still not as good as it used to be when I was a kid, but maybe that's just COVID.
Yeah,
Like,
or being an adult.
still, whenever I forget something, I have a way bigger reaction than I think is normal, because I'm like, oh shit, is it happening again?
Yeah, it's like a trauma response.
Exactly. So, but I'm much more recovered. That's why I can like enjoy reading this book. Like
Good.
I say it's trauma triggering, but like just to have level set for everybody, I'm totally fine. Like I'm just reminded of the situation in a healthy way.
Well, I
Um,
mean, that's the thing that we talk about a lot is
mhm,
emotions are signals.
mhm,
Sometimes the signal is a valuable signal, but no matter what, it's like a thing that you can understand and figure out. Like, hopefully, you can trace back to something, and sometimes that thing's going to be relevant to the situation. Sometimes it isn't, but it's
mhm.
rarely arbitrary.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. Because it feels very arbitrary sometimes. So yeah, I feel like reading this book, although I semi jokingly message you to be like, oh, am I losing my memory as I'm reading this book, right?
No,
But
that's the point.
it did, yeah, but it's a really good like empathetical description what it feels like to be like suddenly landed into this current body and be like, okay, where am I? This is my job. I have to pick it up from like nothing, you know?
Yeah, the mechanisms in the book. If I can nerd out over like the craft of the book for a second,
Oh, please do.
like it's disorienting. If I was a critic, I'd say it sometimes gets a little gimmicky. But the fact that you're talking about hard concepts with an unreliable narrator, with a disjointed timeline intentionally, like it's nonlinear, and you often like they often the same situation gets talked about at multiple points in times by different people who have different sets of data about situations,
Mhm.
and it comes together to basically make you, like as you pointed out, feel like you're losing your mind at some points, because
Mhm.
the second you get a handle on something, you're like, wait, I just learned something new, or I learned like an additional facet about the situation that changed my perception of it. And there's phenomenal and there's like very vivid metaphors in there that you don't often see, that are fantastical but written very straight and dry. My personal favorite is the description of pillars of spiders and spider scrapers and a ton of other visual language to describe a creature that is the size of a titan that is made up of an agglomeration of evil, vicious spiders. I had arachnophobia as a kid, so spider stuff
Oh,
always jumps out to me. After being in the army for a while, you get enough spiders in your bag, you just can't afford to be afraid of them anymore. The
wow.
but like the idea of a skyscraper made of spiders
Mhm.
hits so hard to me as like
Mhm.
a bad character, like a villain character. Dude, every time I read it, I'm just like, man, I wish I came up with that. It's so good.
I felt like the author was really good at injecting like very grotesque
Yep.
descriptions, like things coming out of your eyeballs, which just
Yeah.
reminded me of Baldur's Gate 3, I guess, like the,
Yeah.
the
And
slug coming out of your eyeball situation.
yeah, but in like a non-gratuitous way, which I think is
Mhm.
really hard.
And what I'm losing my memory right now. I was going
Yeah.
to ask you, like, what did this remind? Have you ever lost your memory? Is it just me, or were there
I mean,
situations like that?
I've certainly had a few beers and have some black
Oh,
spots
come
in
on.
the memory. Um,
I've
but
had
like,
plenty of those too.
I mean, I've also had plenty of brain bonks where I lose stretches of time. I would say it's more like the thing that I experience more often
Mhm.
is the blending of multiple similar scenarios together as opposed to like explicit gaps in memory.
Mm.
Like one thing about this book which I find really really interesting is the device that I talked about earlier of a person realizing they're in a situation and trying to piece it together by like looking around the hole as opposed to like knowing the thing that they're missing.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, look, and as an example, they're like, oh, I'm wearing a wedding ring, I must be married type thinking.
Mhm.
Um, I've been in so many parts of the woods. I've been in so many parts of the desert. I've been in so many, I've opened my laptop so many times that any individual day sometimes blends into the thousand other versions of that day that I've had. And
Mhm.
so it'll be like constructing a timeline will be tough. We'll be like, oh, did we run that mission on this week or this week? Because it's kind of like Groundhog Day. So I think I have much more exposure to that. I actually, Alyssa might remember this person. I won't call him out by name, but we had a friend who it ended up funny. So it's not the worst thing, but he got roofied at a party in high school, or not high school, in college.
Mhm.
So he got roofied at a party in college, and he woke up in the cab of a backhoe on a construction site.
Oh, wow.
And so
That's
like
so impressive, actually.
Well, I mean, so we tried to help him reconstruct the scenario. I wasn't on the event, but I was part of the reconstruction. But basically, as far as they can tell, is he got separated from the group at some point in the
Uh-huh.
evening. They think after that he had been roofied, and it was Virginia and it was cold, and so
Mhm.
he was like trying to find shelter, and so he broke into a construction site and broke into the cab of this thing to try and stay warm, and
Oh,
then woke up in the morning and was trying to figure out what happened. And I don't know if he ever did, but
wow.
you know,
It's
he's
like,
fine now.
The Hangover.
Yeah. So that stuff is real, and that's super scary.
Mhm.
Kristen, I want to ask, because there's a lot that I like about this book. Is there anything that you didn't like?
Oh, that's I feel like there's not much I didn't like about the book. It's well, I think there are some elements. As I'm trying to figure out, like, how would this book play out in a movie, right? In fact, there might
Yeah,
even be
yeah.
like anime movies already. I think
Hmm.
the description of the romance, like the love between the characters, is
Yeah,
really hard to pull off. It's
yeah.
almost like you have to buy it. That which is a key plot point in this book. So like the romance comes across as a little bit lower chemistry than I would like, in order
Mm,
to make me believe in the connection between the protagonists, which is a couple. So
that's funny.
yeah, but on the other hand, it's because it's hard to portray that when everyone is forgetting who they are like all the time, right?
Yeah. It like it's in contrast with the rest of the book, which is like ruthlessly pragmatic. It's like one of
Mm-hmm.
the things where you're like, oh, you just have to believe that they feel this way, just despite all of the context of no, you probably shouldn't believe that based on your experience.
Yeah, I think Severance also suffers from this as well
Yeah,
between
for
the
sure.
romantic characters. It's just hard to make people feel like they're together when they don't remember it.
Yeah, like I oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about like the comparison between a visual stories have different signals that you can send to the user, different messages that you can pass versus text, right?
Mhm.
Like in a lot of ways, it's like a sparser signal reading through text.
Yeah.
So you got to do,
And there's also like chemistry between actors too.
yeah, exactly.
As I feel like certain active pairings just have it and certain just
Yeah,
don't, no matter how much you try.
yeah. The I thought this romance might be a really interesting representation. This isn't said anywhere, but I
Mhm.
think this romance might be an interesting representation of like a neurodivergent couple.
Oh,
I like
I didn't think about it that way, but that kind of makes
like
sense.
like now that I've said it, does that like that's how I kind of rationalized it at my brain. I was like, oh, these are not normal people. Not that it's like not that's not a
Yes, because there's almost like there's
diminutive.
no normal people in the entire universe of this
Yeah,
book.
yeah. Everyone's a weirdo in a good way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, the part for me the parts for me that were tough is I thought the back half of the book deserved another like 30% of development.
The how they wrap up the ending.
Like not just the ending, but the it's honestly kind of the same problem that Severance had. We've been talking about Severance a lot on the show.
Mhm.
Um, the world starts really big
Mhm.
and then zooms in at the end to like a singular storyline, right? Like
Yeah.
in Severance, there's all these different things. There's political aspects. There's like the
Mhm.
above ground aspects of Lumen. There's like the different, but like by the end of like by the time you get to where you are in the story, where these arcs are today, you've
Mhm.
just dropped a lot of the really interesting parts of the universe. Where like if you invert it and you start really small and the
Mhm.
world expands over time as you're understanding the story, sometimes it's a more fulfilling way of talking about it.
Mhm.
Um, the like this book, I very much felt the connection of a bunch of different individual SCP stories. Like it felt much more like oh, this is a bunch of different short stories versus a narrative arc, like not a narrative arc
Mhm.
compared to the first half of the book where I was like, oh, this is a very like this is pretty cohesive. It might just be because you know less in the beginning, so that
Mhm.
it's harder to point out holes. But for me, like in order to solve the problem of it feeling like a bunch of different things that are happening that you don't really develop in an interesting way, you could have with more time and space and breathing in the story, you could have just talked about all of the very interesting ideas that get brought up in each of these chapters a little bit more.
I wonder if they will refine it in the newer version.
I hope so. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna read it.
Mhm.
Because it's pretty short too, right? It's like 200 pages of pretty redacted text.
Well, yes, there's some pages that are just completely black and
Yeah,
redacted.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of small typeface. I don't know.
It is. Yeah, that's my other complaint about this edition of the book is that the font is really hard to read. Which
I think
also
that's
made
part
me
of it.
have to concentrate.
Well, I think that's part of it too.
Are you
Like,
sure? I think it's a Kindle publishing problem.
oh, you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's meant to be this. Um, Yeah, because I feel like the little stems of the font is a little hard to read, so you do
Well,
have to focus a little bit.
I'm going to call that a feature because
Okay.
we can disagree productively on this show.
Yes.
The typeface is anti-memetic itself, which I think is fun.
Yes. It does have that property, whether you like it or not. So the protagonist talks about killing a bad idea with a good idea.
Yes.
So does that mean that? Well, here's the thing. Anti-memes are like definitionally neutral, right? We can use them for good or use them for evil. By good or evil here, I mean like what's pro-social and what's anti-social, or
Yeah.
what's good for most people, that kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So in that case, like, should we be using anti-memes in our work?
Should
How
we be
would that
using? Sorry, continue.
I was gonna say, how would that benefit creators who are desperate for you to share their YouTube channel, LinkedIn, everything with their friends?
Should we be using pencils in our work? I think
What
um,
ideas are worth protecting through anti-memes?
so. The internet right now is in a weird spot where all of the incentive structures basically reward the most memetic things because everything is roughly ad supported or sponsor supported, which is like by transitive property memetically supported, because the
Mhm.
more views you can get, the better the sponsor feels about the business relationship. But you sacrifice things with that, like architecture. If you design an idea to get to the most people, you have to sacrifice depth
Mhm.
because you can't hit everybody the same. Like everybody can't appreciate things the same because people are different. Cultures are different. Individual life experiences are different. Your perception of time and reality and morality is different. And so, if you want something to hit a lot of people's feeds,
Mhm.
you basically end up with what I think Packy McCormick might have coined on Twitter as like fortune cookie tweets,
Mhm.
because nuanced ideas that require context to understand and really like effort to be part of a maybe a more meaningful discussion, it's not going to be received the same way by everybody. And so you have to, kind of pre-chew it to get a lot of
Mhm.
other people to
Mhm.
understand it. Sometimes that's the right call with your message. Other times it's not. I think serious subjects, I think hard subjects require a lot more nuance in order to have productive evolutions of that idea. And that's a roundabout way of saying is not everybody is for everything, or not. That's another way of saying not everything is for everybody all the time, and that's okay. So, if you are trying to make things creatively or productively in a space that
Mhm.
you need maybe more than a surface level understanding to
Mhm.
have that discussion,
Mhm.
it's arguably sometimes the right call to make things that aren't that shareable
Mhm.
in a broad sense of the word, because then you can protect the you can protect the discussion that you're having in maybe a separate Discord. Shout out OK Banger Discord, where the link is in the chat, if or in the link is in the video description if you want to hang out with us and talk about stuff like this. Not everything is going to be not every discussion is improved by having everybody sit at the table and talk about it, because a lot of people don't put in the work. And if you don't put in the work with some conversations, you aren't making it better. You're just adding noise where other people are trying to do a hard thing.
Mhm.
What do you think, though?
I agree. I think the early stages of idea incubation, there is a level of intimacy. So anti-memetic properties are okay or even desired in those areas, because it's almost like a gating sort of thing, right? But not to be mean and keep people out, but to make sure that those who are interested qualify themselves in through going through some barriers of understanding.
I think gatekeeping is the right call in some circumstances. Do I think you should vilify somebody and like, call them a piece of dirt or whatever? No,
Hmm.
but like if you have a club that everybody can be in all the time with no sort of social contract between members,
Hmm.
you have a different kind of club than a place where everybody shows up and has a shared context.
Right. And the danger right now in the world, as we are in mimetic warfare, is that those with different interests than that are less pro-social can easily take something mimetic and then like distort it to fit their goals, right? And so the anti-mimetic properties kind of protect against that temporarily.
Yeah, it's we've had we'll say like charms against evil, for thousands of years in human
Hmm.
culture.
Hmm.
It's all the same idea of like how do you protect sacred spaces or how do you protect valuable spaces?
Hmm.
Um, I think I think we should be more explicit. There are people who range from, run of the mill griefers who just like screwing up discussions on the public internet to
Hmm.
truly evil bad actors that are trying to actively distort and manipulate things for their own ends.
Hmm.
And if you want to interact with people around the world in these on issues that are hard to discuss and there aren't easy answers, you
Hmm.
have to have some sort of protective barrier from those people. VGR Venkatesh Rao has been talking about. I think he calls it the balkanization of the internet or like the fragmented internet. People are retreating into group chats and discords and these like
Hmm.
silos everywhere as part of this protective impulse because they can see because everybody sees what happens when everybody can have access to every discussion with no barriers, and it's
Hmm.
like good for the advertisers who want people engaged and locked into their phone, but it's not good for people.
Definitely. Man, VGR is so good at coming up with words.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting our reps in. We're gonna coin some stuff here soon.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
so uh,
but I think like there's also this danger, right, of using because now memes are so over. We're so into anti-memes now, and as you know, like then it becomes another like twisted status play to use anti-meme as a form of status to be like, oh, if
sure,
you get
yeah.
it, you get it, and that's the shade of anti-meme I don't particularly love because it's like you're just taking the thing you're fighting against and turning back into itself.
I mean, I think that person wasn't fighting against it in the first place, right? They're trying to they're the
Are
bad
they
actor.
capitalizing? Are
What
they
was that?
consciously doing that? I'm not sure if people are consciously doing that. I think it's accidental.
I think there are unconscious bad actors,
Mhm.
right? Like, do I think like a rambunctious 10-year-old who ruins the birthday party because they're jealous of the kid is
Mhm.
consciously being evil? No. Do I think they're a bad actor? Yes. And so like what I'm trying to say is like I was a music kid in high school and I was like the nerd, like I was like the bad version of the hipster sometimes of like the, oh, you haven't heard of Alisana or you haven't heard of From First to Last. That's actually what Skrillex Sonny Moore did before he became, like
You can
that.
enjoy these music choices in our Discord as well.
Yeah, I got positive pro social recommendations in the Discord as well. But like that pitchfork music review energy is also a
Mm.
bad actor, and so
Mhm.
they're just weaponizing the idea of relative status in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's the kind of gatekeeping that I think is a little problematic.
yeah, but there's always going to be bad people. We just got to make spaces that we care about.
Mhm. So, uh, what do you would you rate this book as a C in
So
our bizarre rating system that you explain?
yeah, Uh, our rating system, pretty simple. There are three C's. Cameron gets a C, Kristen gets a C, chat in the comment section gets a C as well, which we tally up later. So drop a comment on whether you would recommend this or read this or you want to read this below.
Mhm.
I give this a solid C. I recommended it to you. I will recommend it to anybody else that likes accessible, interesting sci-fi book experiments. If you're hyper online, this is going to hit pretty hard. If you're
Mhm.
not online, I don't know how you're watching this video, but thanks for dropping in. So firm C for me. What about you, Kristen?
Yeah, it's a firm C for me as well. Like, it's just going into my, very small sci-fi canon. And I would recommend it to yeah, if you enjoy the TV show Severance, if you enjoy the movie Memento, the idea of memory loss as a device is interesting to you, then this is a fantastic book.
If you just feel confused about the world, it's probably a fun little externalization of your internal conflict.
Oh, that's really well said.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Twilight Zone heads would probably get a kick out of this too. That reminds me, I
Mhm.
got to send it to my uncle. He's an OG Twilight Zone head. Okay, Kristen, what are we reading next?
Ah, thanks for asking.
Welcome for asking. It's almost like we planned it.
So, you can see much better in
Ooh.
Cameron's screen as mine's flipped.
I
We
mean, I think
have
your clarity is pretty clear. You're just backwards. Kristen lives in
backwards.
Bizarro Land.
Mhm. Ask this book a question by my friend, full disclosure, my friend, Vicky Tan.
That's the
That is
title.
just in the
Ask
group.
this book a question, not a command. Although I guess it's a command.
Yeah, and also has a subtitle, An Interactive Journey to Find Wisdom for Life's Big and Little Decisions.
I'm
I
excited.
went through, I saw the evolution of the book title, which took many, many iterations.
Yeah. I'm excited. I got some big and little decisions to be making pretty much right now. And
Mhm.
so I'm excited to have an excuse to be a little bit more reflective than I am. I mean, let's be real. We are so obsessed with ourselves. We think about ourselves, like our brains, a lot.
Mhm.
But I like having an external thing because I get in the thought patterns. What are you excited about this book? What
Well,
about this book excites you?
yeah, so since I did my PhD in neuroscience, I love the exploration of cognitive biases, and
Cool.
Vicky has done a really great job of making these like heady concepts of like 1,000 different kinds of cognitive biases much more accessible through storytelling.
Oh, okay.
So, and she's also a designer by her day job. So, yeah, she
Ooh.
works at one of these like really big companies as a staff designer, and so she's really taking that skill into the illustrations in the book as well. So if you love like, really well done illustrations
Oh,
for
she did all the illustrations? That's fun.
yeah, yeah, she drew everything herself.
I already like this royal blue inner cover.
Mhm.
It's a very Moroccan.
Yeah. So,
Sick.
oh yeah, and I also went to her book launch recently, and so I got the custom stamp,
Okay.
along with the Charlie bookmark. Charlie is
Ooh,
her Great Pyrenees dog, who was featured prominently in this book. Oh, that's
love
his
that.
face on that side.
I'm a sucker for animal companions.
Yeah,
Sick.
like she's
Uh,
also a pretty small person, and her dog is like humongous.
yeah.
So you also get that wonderful contrast.
I wonder what we're gonna title the next one. That'll be fun to talk about.
Mhm.
Okay,
Ask
Kristen.
this video a question.
Ask this video a question. That's a good one. That's a
Mhm.
good one. Shout out that. I mean, I guess it's just the title, but still good. All right, Kristen. Anything else we got to get into?
I think we had a really lovely time chatting today. So thanks for those who joined us today. So Cool Beans in the car, Metanorm, who is biased. Thanks to Isis, as usual. Danny, Iskandar, Royal, Priyanka, Ian,
And
your
Alyssa, thanks for
Alyssa.
dropping in.
Yeah,
Let's catch up. Haven't
remind us
literally
for
haven't talked
crypto.
about it in a while. She's fascinating. I'll tell you about her later. All right.
Oh, oh.
Bye, everybody.
So
Have a good
correct,
rest of your
sarcastic.
day.